I'm here. Are you here, Linwood?
I think I'm here. I'm just checking.
Well,
I believe that
according to the closed captioning that we have, you're not, because it's having a heck of a lot of trouble with your name. I think you're Linwood Barclay is, I think, what it's decided that your name is going to be. But I think everybody knows who you are.
But you can see me and you can hear me.
I can see you and hear you, so that ought to be, there we go. That ought to be just great.
That should be it.
Anyway, I am so glad that we have a chance to do this tonight. We had did it in person about 2 or 3 years ago, which was a lot more fun. But the advantage of doing it remotely is there are people from out of town that can join into us as well. So
excellent.
Everything has its advantages. Now, I'm going to give a really, really brief introduction to you because I think that I could probably say Linwood Barclay needs no introduction. I'm sure that most of the people who signed on tonight, because they have heard your name, they've read your books, and they're interested in what you have to say. But very briefly, Linwood Barclay is not only a New York Times bestseller, but he's probably a best-selling author for almost every list that you could mention, including the #1 Canadian book in, I think it's the Toronto Star for the last couple of weeks. Linwood's the author of 20, am I right that it's 21 books?
20, well, there's 20 adult. This new book is the 20th thriller for adults. And then there's a few others here and there.
20-ish books, of which almost everyone, if not everyone, has achieved international bestseller status. And Linwood is known pretty much mostly around the world. You're very, very popular in the UK, very popular in Germany. I know a lot of places in the United States. And you're proudly Toronto's own Linwood. You live in Toronto now, and you have a place in the county, a vacation place, which is why we get to chat to you in person sometimes at the library. So we're going to talk tonight about your newest book, which is called Find You First, the 20th book. I'm assuming that most people
hold it up, shouldn't I? You know, like
oh, absolutely.
You know, just sort of like show and tell. So there it is.
Oh, there it is. Find You First. Oh, I like the eye. Yes. So this is Find You First from Linwood Barclay. Like all of Linwood's books are standalones, except for his first. You first started with the Zach Walker series, which was a very light series about a nice, fun, I was going to say fun-loving, not really. Funny, typical middle-class Canadian-American guy who reminded me an awful lot of the author. But since then, you've gone on to do a lot more thriller-type books dealing with serious themes, people caught in exceptionally unpleasant circumstances. Their lives are turned upside down, largely because of things that are totally come out from nowhere. They have no idea what's going to happen and what has happened that's upset their life so much. So Find You First, I'm going to assume that not everyone who's listening has read the book. So we're going to try and have a spoiler-free conversation, although you do have to get into themes and all that, but we won't tell you what happens at the end. So the first thing I want to ask is about, in Find You First, the book concerns, or certainly the instigating factors are what someone learns as a result of DNA testing for determining ancestry. And I now actually know some people personally who've gone and done that, usually for their own entertainment or for their own furthering of their family knowledge. But I wonder what your thoughts are about that. Do you think this sort of thing, as happens in the book, it opens a huge can of worms? Otherwise, of course, we wouldn't have an adventure thriller. Do you think that the potential negatives outweigh the advantages of this sort of technology?
Well, I think that if it's, you know, if there are some safeguards in place that it works. I mean, if you can have your, DNA analyzed and so forth, but if you have, have these sort of provisions where I don't wish to be connected with someone else. I want to know about myself. I want to know what my background is and so forth, but I don't wish to be connected with others whose DNA may have some sort of links with mine. So there are those kinds of safeguards in place. So I suppose it's, and if you do want to have those kind of connections made available, then there have been a lot of very interesting stories out there in the world of people who have connected with half siblings they didn't know they had, or a parent that they didn't know was their parent, and so forth. So I mean, I think that it's like so many of these new technologies, there are pluses and there are minuses in all of it. And so, and in this book, it's, and briefly, I mean, I should probably, in this one, I've got a guy who's a wealthy tech guy. He's got millions of dollars. He's 42, and he's learned, of course, that money can't buy everything, especially time. And so he's learned that this particular disease he has, there's a 50% chance it can be passed on to the next generation. And people say, well, it's just as well that you don't have kids. And what they don't know is that he was a sperm donor some 2 decades ago. And there are these possible, kids out there, grown children, who he, might have this condition. So after some soul searching, he decides, well, I should try to find them and tell them, first of all, to get themselves checked. And also, who am I going to leave all this money to? Like, I've just got this vast fortune. And as he embarks on a search to find them, they all start vanishing one by one, which is the pitch for the book. And in the book, you've got people who are trying to connect. I mean, there's a character named Chloe, a young woman, who is in the process of doing this and is, connected with a half brother and so forth. So, but it's the kind of, I couldn't have written this thriller 10, 15 years ago, because now we're at a time where you can turn on the TV at night and there's ads. Send us a saliva sample and we'll tell you everything. Well, I mean, that didn't even exist a decade ago.
Because one of the characters in the book said that, of course, that he would not have been able to do this, as he says it himself, which made me think about the opening of the sort of can of worms thing. Because there are certainly people that don't want to be found for whatever reason there might be. So as you alluded to, Miles Cookson is the main character, the protagonist, and he's this multimillionaire, and he's found out that he has this medical condition that he has a few months to live. Now, I think when I was reading this, I'm sure that we all wonder at some time or another, what would I do if I knew I was dying, but I had several months of, quote unquote, normal living ahead of me. So is that something that you personally have ever thought about? But before you answer, I'm going to tell you that when I was thinking about that, I think I would enjoy eating unlimited quantities of Chinese and Indian takeout.
Yes, that's right. That kind of reminds me, not quite the same thing, but when my wife Neith and I, we were on a book tour in Australia about 10 years ago, and we were at a seaside dinner restaurant, wonderful place in Sydney. And the waiter came over and said, I need to tell you that there's been an earthquake off the coast of New Zealand, and there is a report of a possible tsunami heading this way. And I think Neith's first reaction was, let's have 2 desserts. I mean, that's what the heck. I haven't given that a lot of thought for myself, but for my character, once he learns that his time may be limited, and also as this condition progresses, he'll lose certain motor functions and so forth. He just goes, he kind of goes skydiving, does this, starts, he's a health nut. Now he's sitting in the drive-through for McDonald's because he figures, what the heck, I'm gonna have a good time. And of course, he's got his fancy Porsche, and he's driving around racking up speeding tickets like crazy, just shoving them in the glove compartment, thinking, I'm never going to have to deal with these. So he's, but he finds that this kind of fun only lasts so long. And I'm gonna go back and open this blind because I think I'm getting hard to see here. But I closed it a minute ago because it was the sun was in my face. But now I think it's gonna be better now. There we go. I'm back.
There you go. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Yep. Okay, I found that interesting. Another thing that I found really interesting is the book is that one of the characters is presented basically with the Miles finds one of his supposed descendants, or a person that he believes to be his descendant, and presents her with the idea, let's get you tested to see if you carry this gene. And she balks at that at first, right? She doesn't want to. She says, why would I don't want to know. Yeah. And she's a young woman, very young woman. And I kind of sympathize with her. I thought, I don't know if I'd want to know either. So what I don't know, I guess it's a personal question. What about you? Do you think you'd want to know?
I don't think I would. I think that if I went to the doctor and learned that I had a particular condition that gave me a limited amount of time, I would act upon that. But if someone could say to you, you have a condition that in 5 years, that's it. That's what you've got, even though you feel perfectly healthy right now. So now you have 5 years to worry about this. And if you hadn't known, you could have just gone those 5 years and then kaboom, be done. And Chloe, who's this very young woman, who I think in many ways is the wisest one in the whole book, she says, well, you know what? I could get hit by a bus tomorrow too. But
On
I
her
don't
way to the testing station.
I went to testing. That's right. Get hit by a bus. I don't, you're gonna tell me what else, how much do I have to know? And so she does, she's not interested in having it. And as you say, yeah.
Yeah, I think that probably a lot of it. It's interesting. I like that. I like books like that, that in a way they can say to you, speak to me like, oh, wow. I mean, I'm not a multimillionaire faced with a whole lot of descendants I've never heard of, but I can still sort of think, how